Now let's get to our first topic of discourse. Now this year's International Workers' Day came at a time when not just the workforce, but Nigeria as a country is faced with great national economic and security uncertainties, as there is hardly any state in the country that is not menaced by serious insecurity concerns such as terrorism, banditry, herdsmen, land grabbing, insurgency, and the new but surging upsurge in the targeted killings and all of that, security personnel, as well as destruction of stations in Southeast and South-South. This development has no doubt affected the economic output of the country, which is faced by many. Well, let's understand the plight of a worker in all of these issues. To do this, I'm being joined live from our Abuja studios is the president of the Capital Market Academics of Nigeria, Professor Uche Uwaleke. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tolu. It's indeed my pleasure. Compliments of the season.
Yes, I wish you the same, Prof. Prof, let me start with the theme of this year's May Day, which is labor, politics, and quest for good governance and development in Nigeria. What do you think this means, and what role do you think the workers can play in shaping the political structure of Nigeria's economy, considering the realities that we face as a nation?
I'm not too sure I heard you. I didn't get the question very clearly.
Prof, can you hear me now? Hello, Prof.
It's poor from my end.
Prof, can you hear me now?
If you can repeat the question, Tolu.
Can you hear me now, Prof?
No, not quite.
Prof, let's take a break and come back to start this discussion. Let's take a break and we'll return with Business Nigeria. Let's take a break.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw earthen material slabbed, stroked, and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move way in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known. For when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty, erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
In the month of May, the month begins with Workers' Day on the 1st. On the 3rd, freedom of the fourth estate of the realm takes center stage on World Press Freedom Day. On the 5th of May 2010, President MUSA YAR'ADUA passed on, but before then, he has set out to reform the country's electoral system. 12 years after, how has that gone? 17th is World Telecommunications Day. On the 23rd, focus shifts to the International Day to end obstetric fistula. Children's Day is celebrated on the 27th. 29th of May is exactly 1 year to the end of President Buhari's administration. How has the journey been? And the 31st is World No Tobacco Day. Stay with TVC News.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, Professor Uche Uwaleke, live from Abuja studio. So, Prof, I was asking you what you think an average worker will be running through his mind at the moment with the current economic challenges in Nigeria's economy.
Well, the the average worker in Nigeria, I expect the average worker to be interested in what is going on, politically. The average worker, first and foremost, of course, has the right to vote, and it's also the responsibility of the worker to, be part of the political process to ensure that the right candidates, get elected. Because where the wrong candidates get elected, of course, the policies that are made would be would not be in the interest of the average worker. The May Day provides an opportunity to actually reflect on the plight of the workers. The plight of the workers, exacerbated by the rising cost of living. As you know, each time cost of living rises, it is that worker that is on fixed income, the low-income worker that that bears the brunt. If you recall, since 2011, when the minimum wage was put at 18,000 naira, inflation rates in the country has gone way up. As of 2011, the average inflation rate was around 9-10%. As of 2021, average inflation rate stood at 16%. So inflation rate has gone up. Ditto for exchange rate. Exchange rate too, as you know, has moved from about 162 naira to the dollar from that time to now, even if we use the official exchange rate to 415 naira to the dollar, and so this has tended to erode whatever effect, whatever positive impact the increase in the minimum wage from 18,000 to 30,000 has brought about. So every day we see purchasing power declining. Every day we see the standard of living of the average worker lowering, and of course that is fueling poverty. And if you also put it in context, it is not helped by the fact that underemployment is rising. We know from the National Bureau of Statistics figures, unemployment rate in Nigeria as of the fourth quarter of 2020 was put at over 33%, and underemployment rate at over 20%. So what that tells you is that over 50% of the workforce is not employed. Now, even of those that are employed, a significant number is underemployed. So when you talk about workers, a lot of workers are doing menial jobs, because that's what underemployment entails. A situation in which you have, for example, a PhD graduate, driving a truck, being a truck driver, and I'm sure it's very common to walk into a store, a grocery store, a small shop, and you find the salesperson there telling you that he or she, is a graduate. Is common these days. You walk into a hotel, I'm not talking about a 5-star or 4-star hotel, and you find the salesperson there, the cashier, telling you that he or she is a graduate. So these are examples of underemployment, and that does not help the fate of workers or the plight of workers in Nigeria, because we have so many of them. We have a growing army of such category of people. These ordinarily are jobs that you should expect IT students to be doing. You should expect to find people do during by way of vacation jobs. Vacation jobs are no more. IT places are no more, because their places are being filled by graduates who ordinarily should be in better jobs, or who ordinarily should be self-employed and or entrepreneurial, or doing things that will fetch them meaningful income. So in summary, very many Nigerians today, very many workers today, are not earning living wages. They are not taking, you talk about take-home pay. Take-home take-home pay doesn't really take people home, on account of inflation, on account of exchange rate, and generally, of course, we know inflation fits into the misery index. So we have high poverty rates, high unemployment rate, and all of that telling on the plight of the workers in Nigeria.
Let's now look at some reforms that are expected, harmonizing exchange rates, and of course, hike in energy costs. We know what's been happening with tariffs, with electricity, and a lot of this developments. And like you said, the minimum wage, many say, can't even take them home. Do you see more people falling into that poverty line? World Bank is projecting about 12 million in 2023. What are you saying?
Yeah, and even just recently, the IMF is projecting that inflation rates for 2022 will come in at over 16%. Meanwhile, the government is looking at 13%. So, of course, the more inflation that you have, the more you find that the purchasing power of the naira, is weakened, and that tells or impacts negatively, on the workers. So, if the trend is not checked, of course, you are likely to get more people, thrown into the poverty, bracket. The federal government, through the National Development Plan, intends to lift 100 million people out of poverty over the next 10 years, I think starting last year. And from the National Development Plan, the intention is to lift as many as 30 million people, out of poverty, providing in the process about 20 million, jobs. But that's not going to happen if we have rising inflation. That's not going to happen if we have, tepid GDP growth rate. GDP growth, needs to be stronger than what it is today for that to be, for that goal to be achieved. And that's why in the plan, the idea is to grow at a rate that's at least higher than 4% over the next 5 years. But my worry about that is that that doesn't seem to be occupying the attention of politicians at the moment. Tolu, you will agree with me that politics is more or less trumping the economy now. Politics is dominating the national discourse. And when you listen to some of the people angling for elective offices, they don't talk about these issues. They don't talk about how to really implement or see to the implementation of the National Development Plan. Nobody is talking about that. Nobody is talking about, how to lift people out of poverty, create, jobs, and so on. All we hear is how to take power from the ruling government, or how to retain power by the, ruling government. We don't really get to hear these issues, and that's why I'm worried that is not coming to the fore. Our politicians should be concerned about what to do to create jobs, what to do to improve the lives of workers in Nigeria. And that's important, because even if you look at insecurity we are having today, for me, the root cause of insecurity in Nigeria today is economic. I think it's economic, because the major insecurity we have today, in my reading, tends to have moved from Boko Haram, with, of course, religious undertone, to banditry. Banditry, kidnapping, these two in particular have economic roots. By the time you have, an environment that is job enabling, by the time jobs are provided for these youths, the youths in this country, many of them will not have time for kidnapping. They won't have time for banditry. And from recent interviews we have also seen, or videos we've watched, some of these bandits tell you that part of why they're into what they're doing is because of, they were neglected, nobody's providing for them, and so on. So I think that should be what should concern our politicians now, how to ensure that the unemployment rate is reduced, that jobs are provided, that workers, workers' welfare generally, is taken care of.
Beautiful. Prof, let me ask you, one of the major issues brought up at this May Day celebration is the FG and ASU saga, which is still on, yet to be resolved, the IPs and whatever, according to the federal government and the position of the lecturers. That's one sad thing that has been lingering. I like your comments to that one. And also on the other side, what's your outlook? Despite all of this, they said Nigeria's outlook looks so uncertain. Vaccination issues and all of that. It will affect the layman. What are your projections as we move on?
Okay, yeah, thank you. But before then, let me speak to this issue of minimum wage.
Go ahead, please.
Tolu, as you know, the compliance level is still not where it ought to be. A number of states, to the best of my knowledge, have not implemented a minimum wage, the 30,000 minimum wage, the way it ought to be implemented. You hear that in some states, percentages are still, workers are still taking percentages of what is due to them, as salary. And it's disheartening to note that even in this month in particular, in some states, we hear that some workers, were not paid before the Salah holidays. So the level of compliance of minimum wage, should be enhanced. The federal government, in the past, had come to the aid of some states by way of bailouts to help them to, implement this. But unfortunately, again, we hear that some of those funds were not used for the purposes they were meant. They were, diverted to, some other purposes. So that in itself poses a problem. Recall that in 2016, when we had that recession, it was primarily because a number of states couldn't pay salaries. When you implement minimum wage, it has a way of increasing aggregate demand. It has a way of, positively impacting GDP. I've seen a number of studies, that have said that implementation of minimum wage leads to increase in GDP per capita. And some of these studies too have also said, a particular one I saw, World Bank study that appeared in the Open Knowledge Repository of the World Bank. It talked about the fact that implementing minimum wage does not really have a negative statistical impact on the economy. In other words, when you increase minimum wage, particularly in an economy where the inflation is not demand-driven, as we have in Nigeria. Inflation is more of a cost-push thing than demand-driven. It tends to stimulate the economy and, of course, reflect the economy. So if we are serious about stronger GDP growth, we need to do something about workers' salary. Not only in the public sector, but also in the private sector, to ensure that a lot of jobs in the private sector, is not casualized, because that also is affecting, workers' motivation, is affecting productivity. Excuse me. Now, on the issue of the ASU struggle, of course, that it has to do primarily with the non-implementation of an agreement ASU had with the government, some years now, and that's affecting motivation. That's also affecting, output. Okay, today a number of academics are leaving the shores of Nigeria, going to other countries simply because of this issue. So in order to check brain drain, in order to also ensure that the right environment is provided in the universities and tertiary education in this country, that agreement, ought to be implemented. I think that's what ASU is saying primarily. Yeah. It's not really about what comes into their pocket, but it's about creating the right environment for education in this country. The issue of IPPIs and UTAS, let me also say that what has been established is that IPPIS is not suitable to, the workings in an academic environment. In a university environment, for example, it doesn't encourage, for example, it has no provision for people who go to universities to do sabbaticals. It has no provision for visiting lecturers. It has no provision for other academic activities that are that lecturers get involved in, okay, which are remunerated, like supervision of students' projects, student dissertation. There are allowances attached to that. IPPIS, doesn't seem to accommodate that. But the one designed by ASU, which has also passed integrity test, the UTAS, okay, has accommodated that, and that's what ASU is saying, that the government should consider using that for universities because of the peculiar nature of the services rendered in that sector. Again, all in the interest of standards. So that's what I will say with regard to that.
Right.
I'm pleading with the federal government to, take a second look at that and, sit down with ASU to resolve that as quickly as possible. On the issue of outlook or suggestions going forward, you see, in industrial relations, there's what is called the the industrial relations triangle. Okay, you have the governments, you have the employers, private sector employers, and then you have the employees. On the part of the government, it remains the role of government to provide enabling environment for workers. I also think that the government should also be more concerned about reducing the out-of-pocket expenditure that workers make. Because even if you increase the minimum wage today, okay, as long as the out-of-pocket expenditure is high, it will not have it may not have significant impact on the welfare of workers. So out-of-pocket expenditure in terms of, for example, health, the health insurance coverage in Nigeria today is very low, below 5% of the working population. Yeah. So efforts should be made to scale up the health insurance to cover as many people as possible, not only those in the public sector. Out-of-pocket expenditure in terms of even education, or assisting workers' children, who are in school one way or the other. Yes, free education, primary and secondary level should be encouraged, including finding the way to subsidize to what they spend when they're also training, their children. Out-of-pocket expenditure in terms of transport. A number of workers spend a lot, transporting to and from office. The government can also help, employers can also help by providing buses that will convey workers, to and from office. I'm aware that, of course, some ministries and agencies of government are already doing that. So the issue of out-of-pocket expenditure is very critical to reduce what a worker, spends, out-of-pocket expenditure. So I've also talked about the government assisting subnational governments, to be able to handle salaries of their staff. The recent suggestion or amendments, adjustments to the revenue allocation formula is a welcome development.
We must wrap up now.
I understand that formula now is more in favor of states. At the moment, as you know, Tolu, the federal government takes 52.6%. The state government takes 26.7%. The local governments share 20.6%. So, but if that is, adjusted in favor of states, they will be in a stronger position to discharge those responsibilities.
Professor Uche Uwaleke, I must interject now. I must thank you so much for your time. Brilliant conversation there. I know we can go on and on when it has to do with workers and what should be done by government, but that's much time can take. I must thank you so much, President, Association of Capital Market Academics of Nigeria, Do enjoy the rest of your day, sir.
Thank you very much.